Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hammer Down Ranked. It has been a little while, it's been a crazy month for me, but we're back and that's very exciting. If you are new to the channel, what we do here is we rank the albums from a whole range of different bands. But today, a really exciting episode for me. In my humble opinion, the greatest pop punk band of all time, Sum 41. Disagree with me if you will, I think they're better than Blink-182, I don't care what you say. So this amazing band were formed in 1996, the year I was born, in Ontario, Canada. They'd previously been in other bands like Casper or Casper, I don't know how you pronounce it. But the first Sum 41 lineup consisted of Deryck Whibley, John Marshall, Steve Jocz and Grant McVitie. They quickly recruited Richard Roy on bass. The band recruited manager and producer Greg Norrie, who advised that John step aside and that Deryck Whibley went on to the main vocals. So John stepped aside, Deryck took front position, and they recruited Dave Baksh on guitars. A car accident then led to Richard Roy leaving the band and he was replaced by Jason McCaslin. So Sum 41, as most of you will probably know, were real true rock stars, especially back in the day. They've had the private jets, they've married celebrities, they've had crazy lives, and we're here today to rank the 8 albums and one extra EP which has got 11 songs. It's half hour long, it's basically an album, and we're going to be putting them in order today. Starting with, in number 9, Screaming Bloody Murder from 2011. This album cycle was when Deryck Whibley fell very heavily into alcoholism when he met his now wife Ariana Cooper. They started as drinking buddies after the divorce of Deryck Whibley to famous rock star in her own right Avril Lavigne. Deryck was also using alcohol to deal with pains from a slipped disc in his back, which was causing him a lot of pain for many album cycles, and it had just never been properly dealt with. So the band were in a pretty messy state at the time. It was released by Island Records, and after just a week with British producer Jill Norton, they decided to self-produce the record. The album to me feels very samey to stuff they'd done before. It was pretty unoriginal. They seemed to take this kind of angle where, Deryck dyed his hair black and whatever, and it almost felt like a sort of My Chemical Romance style album. It was a lot darker. It didn't feel like Sum 41 at all. They were trying to change direction, but it was just a weird record. The album got very mixed reviews. Lots of reviews really slating it, a bit like I'm doing now. Sorry guys. It did, however, do fairly well in the charts. It was 31 on the US Billboard and 66 here in the UK. There's only one song I like on the entire album, and it's Time For You To Go, and it is time for that album to go because I don't want to talk about it. It was just no good. But we're done with that one now. It's fine. That was number 9. It was a blip in the career. Moving on to number 8, and it is their debut EP, Half Hour of Power. Now, this doesn't really count as an album. It is officially an EP, but it's half hour long. It's got 11 songs on it, so I'm counting it in this list. So this was released by Big Rig Records in 2000. The album cover, like several album covers, features Steve Jocz, this time holding a Nerf gun with some explosions in the background. It's pretty cool. Immediately for a debut, it got some charting success. It was at 176 in the US Billboard and 143 here in the UK album charts. It's punk, it's raw, it's a big fuck you all the way through. There's these bizarre moments of heavy metal in there, Iron Maiden inspired songs with triplets going on and everything. Now, this EP is very significant because it contains the band's first ever classic that remains in the set list for years and years to come. Makes no difference. This song is awesome and they play it all the way throughout their career. It's an awesome song. And that is the first song that you can really see the Sum 41 magic and what awesome stuff was going to come. So overall, it's fun, it's punk, but it's not a very good album. It just has one wonderful song on it. But from now on, all 7 of the records are very good. And in number 7, we've got 2019's Order in Decline. So this was the final record that was released via Hopeless Records. Now the significance of this album was that Sum 41 had taken a lot of time off, made their big comeback with their 2016 album that we're going to talk about later on in the video, and whilst on tour celebrating that record all around the world, Deryck wrote most of the songs, or at least had the ideas for the 2019 album. He got home from the tour and just began writing and had all this amazing music. They themselves have described it as their heaviest and most aggressive record, and I can't disagree with that at all. And it's also one of few records with some real political hints in there. Now, Deryck says that he didn't want to write about specific political moments in time. There are some political influences on the record. The first single was Out for Blood, really good song, and when the album dropped, it reached 60 in the Billboard charts and 29 over here in the UK. I really like the song Heads Will Roll. The intro sounds like something that The Used would write. I don't know why, it just reminded me of that. And Catching Fire is a really lovely song, and there's a great acoustic version of that one too. So why is this album number 7 and not further up? Well, I think actually the whole whole album is all good songs, but no classics. None of these songs on this album stand out as Sum 41 hour set list bangers that you'd put in amongst Fat Lip and Makes No Difference and all these other songs. I just can't picture any of these songs being good enough to make an all-time classic set list. So, moving on to number 6, the final album from the band, 2024's Heaven and Hell. This is a double album with a heavier half and a more pop-punk half, and you can probably figure out which goes where. It is the first, the last and only record released via Rise Records. So a year before, on the 23rd of February 2023, the band announced that they would be breaking up and would be releasing one final album and a whole load of tours and festivals to go with it. The first single, Landmines, came out on the 27th of September 2023. Now, on that album cycle, I got to see Sum 41 one last time. I saw them at Download Festival in 2024. What a performance. It was it was emotional, it was wonderful, and I have to say Derek was on fine form. If you check out my Download Festival review video, Sum 41 was one of my favourite sets from the entire weekend. I'd also seen them headline the second stage in 2017, but this performance was even better. They were just absolutely on point. And you could tell that they were emotional. It was their last ever UK festival. So it's received a lot of critical acclaim. Even Blabbermouth said it was the most complete and adventurous album of the band's career. I think it's a very cleverly written album. The first half harks back to the more pop-punk days from All Killer No Filler, and the second half of the album is the heavier stuff that the last two albums had encompassed. My favourite from Heaven is Radio Silence. My favourite from Hell is How the End Begins. Now, both of those are the last song from each half of the record. How the End Begins it just feels like a very emotional song. When I first listened to that, I felt very, very emotional because it was the last song we were going to hear from Sum 41, and a very, very fitting song to do so as well. Very reflective song. It's just great. So it reached 108 in the US Billboard and 26 over here in the UK. And overall, much like Order in Decline, loads of good songs, but no great standout songs. The only reason it goes above Order in Decline because there's 20 songs, so there's loads more good songs than on the last album. It's really that simple. The whole album's very, very good. It's very, very clever. But again, like Order in Decline, I don't think there's any standout songs that I would put in an all-time classics Sum 41 set. So, number 5, and we've got the first Sum 41 classic album, 2002's Does This Look Infected. This is an absolutely awesome record. It's far heavier than the pop-punk stuff that had come before. I managed to find some stuff about some of the songs and what they were written about. No Brains was written about John Marshall, the old singer for the band, and a falling out that they'd had. The Hell song is written about a friend of the band's who ended up being diagnosed with HIV, which is obviously very, very tragic. It also has Over My Head, that's another one of my favourites from the record, and Still Waiting, which is definitely an all-time classic for the band. The album cover features Steve Jocks, again, this time featured as a zombie. They also released an EP a little bit later on, which is Does This Look Infected 2, and that's got Derek Whibley as a zombie on it. The album has been certified platinum in Japan and Canada and gold in the UK and the US, and when it charted, it reached 32 in the Billboards and 39 here in the UK. Great record, absolute classic, but there's still better stuff to come. But before we go into the top 4, I just wanted to give a mention to my shirt of the week, a band called In Search of Sun. Now, if you are familiar with this channel, you'll know about In Search of Sun already. I've interviewed them, I've been on tour with them, and there's videos of that you can go and watch. I would recommend you do so. But if you haven't, they're a funk metal band from London. They're one of my favourite bands of all time. They're about to, in October, do their 10-year anniversary show of their 2014 album, The World Is Yours. 2017's Virgin Funk Mother is my favourite album from the band. Go and check that out. They recently released a record called Lemon Amigos, and it's absolutely fantastic. I went on the Lemon Amigos tour with the band. It was awesome. So go and check out In Search of Sun. They're absolutely wicked. They've got some great guitar riffs, insane drumming from Sean, and some really, really great vocals from Adam as well. So go and get yourself involved. I will, of course, put some links down in the description of this video, but we've got to get back to ranking the albums from Sum 41. We're into the top 4. And at number 4, controversially, 2001's All Killer No Filler. Now, yes, I know what you're going to say. This record has some of the greatest, most famous pop-punk songs of all time, in particular Fat Lip, Motivation and In Too Deep, some of the biggest songs the genre has ever known. Yes, it reached 13 in the US Billboards and 7 here in the UK, so the most successful album from the band. Yes, it's received platinum multi-times over, released by Island Records. Great effort, fantastic songwriting, classic, catchy songs, written by a band who were like 20 years old. I mean, that's quite something. But I'm afraid to say it is only about half killer and about half filler. It was written by kids. It's just not as good as some of their later material. I mean, Derek Weebly has even said many times before he doesn't quite understand the hype and that he felt that the record wasn't actually that great. So yes, there's many classics in there, some of which are, you know, the most famous songs the band ever released. It was the most successful charting, platinum in multiple countries, but half the album just isn't that great, and that's all I'm going to say on it. So it's a half and half one for me. Half of it is the best material ever, half of it just isn't quite as good as the later stuff. So after that brief dip into that album, I didn't want to talk about it too long because I know I'm going to get stick for that. We're going to move on to number 3, and it's 2016's 13 Voices. This was the first album without Steve Jocks in the band, and it was released by Hopeless Records. So Steve had been replaced by Frank Zumo. Now, we all know what happened after Screaming Bloody Murder. Derek went through a tumultuous time. He went through liver and kidney failure, and so the band kind of fell apart for a little while, and they took a lot of time out. Now, the fans of Sum 41 really gathered around the cause. They were incredibly supportive on Derek's recovery journey, and for their comeback show, they brought back Dave Baksh, who then became a full-time member of the band once again after 9 years away. So there was a lot of hype around the band at the time because they hadn't released an album in 5 years. So when the first single started to drop, the first being Fake My Own Death, which is awesome, just feels like a pop punk classic straight away. Then they released War, which is an insanely emotional song, very, very beautiful song, obviously about a lot of Derek's battles personally. And then another pop punk classic, Goddamn I'm Dead Again. But other than that, the album's a lot heavier. This is when they first sort of, excluding Screaming Bloody Murder, which I don't know what that was, this is the first album that really goes far away from the pop punk into a more rock, even sort of heavy metal vibe for a lot of the records. The album did very well. It got to 22 in the US charts and to 16 here in the UK, and has been certified gold, sold 150,000 copies across Europe. Done very, very well. So why this album goes so high up for me? Well, much like the other recent albums, Heaven and Hell and Order in Decline, this album is good all the way through. Unlike those other two records, I think there are some Sum 41 all-time classic songs in there. Goddamn I'm Dead Again, Fake My Own Death and War. I just think they're classics and they really, really fit in an all-time greatest Sum 41 set list. So top 2 albums. This is where it's going to get even more controversial, and I'm probably going to get some stick for this in the comments, but number 2, 2004's Chuck. Released again on Island Records in 2004. After the intro track, the album kicks straight into one of my favourite songs that Sum 41 ever put out, No Reason. It's intense, it's heavy, it's fast-paced, it really kicks the album in style. Other amazing songs, Pieces, Some Say, Open Your Eyes, We're All to Blame. This album is full to the brim with certified bangers. So this is the last album to feature Dave Baksh before he took his 9-year departure and came back in 13 Voices. He was replaced by Tom Thacker, who remained in the band for the rest of the duration for all of the newer stuff. When Dave came back, Tom's role switched to a rhythm guitar role. Now, I didn't know where the name Chuck came from until I read up on this album to make this video. My goodness, if you don't know the story, it's crazy. So the bands were out in the Democratic Republic of Congo filming a documentary for War Child Canada. Now, whilst they were out there, loads of war broke out around the hotel that they were staying at, and there was a UN peacekeeper who goes by the name of Chuck Pelletier. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that correctly, and he got all of the band and 40 other civilians to safety in the hotel, and eventually the UN stepped in and the APCs came and saved everybody. And it's a pretty crazy story. Imagine gunfire going out of your window. The band had all these thoughts going through their head of, I'm going to die now, am I happy with my career, all of that kind of stuff. There's been loads of interviews about it. I just think that's crazy. What a mad story. So that's where the name of the record comes from. This album got to number 10 in the US and 59 here in the UK. It sold 5 million copies, platinum in various countries, gold in other countries. They also released a 5-song acoustic EP for some of the tracks on this album. And overall for me, this is full to the rafters of classics. A really, really great record. But number 1, and this is the controversial one, and a lot of people are going to hate me for this, 2007's Underclass Hero. The album was self-produced and released under Island Records, and it reached 7 in the US Billboards and 46 here in the UK, so the highest charting in the US at least. It's been certified gold in Canada and Japan. It kicks up with the title track, Underclass Hero, but is followed by some of my favourite tracks ever, Walking Disaster, Speak of the Devil, Count Your Last Blessings, that's a great song. The piano in that song, in the intro, that runs through the song. That really gets me. I think it's great. Best of Me, and of course, With Me, which is my favourite song Sum 41 has ever put out. That song, absolutely amazing. So the album has so many classics in it. It sold 1 million copies worldwide, and Derek Whibley even found himself getting into trouble politically with this record because March of the Dogs was written about George Bush and his, wars. And so Derek was threatened with deportation, which I think is quite funny, but it never quite materialised. But anyway, I think this album is the best record, and I know that not a lot of people agree with me on that one. I read, just out of curiosity, a couple of ranked lists of Sum 41's records, and I don't think I found anybody that put Underclass Hero as number one. But tell me what you think, because that's what's important. So comment below, what order would you put these 9 records in? Do you think I'm crazy and All Killer No Filler or Chuck or Does This Look Infected needs to be number one? Do you think it was one of the newer ones like Heaven and Hell or 13 Voices? Or do you agree with me that Underclass Hero is the best? Let's see. But guys, thank you all so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, help this channel grow. We're going to be ranking the records from Lower Than Atlantis next week, which I'm really, really excited to do. Other than that, have a great week, and we'll see you all very, very soon.